How did I end up here? Lying in your arms, watching city lights burn the stars.
So I'm a big fan of casual games. Casual games have this rather unusual stigma about them, that being they are typically for those who lack the skill to play more competitively based video games, such as fighting games or first-person shooter games. Now, I can see the thinking behind this argument. After all, it's not necessarily wrong, but see, that's a rather negative outlook. Besides, not every game or game genre is for everyone. At the end of the day, gaming is for everyone, but not every game is for everyone. That's why so many different genres of video games exist, like the aforementioned fighting and FPS games, but also ones like racing games, puzzle games, platformers, role-playing games, etc, etc. And you know, the casual games market has a number of different genres within it, perhaps maybe more than the competitive gaming market, simply because it's a much larger audience. The genres that exist in this market include stuff like the previously mentioned puzzle genre, hosting games like Bejeweled, Puyo Puyo, the Professor Layton series, and indie darlings like Braved and Box Boy. Or how about more arcadey type games like Plants vs Zombies? And though maybe I've only listed a small few, what I'm trying to say is that there's tons of variety for casual gamers. Once again though, that term is often used in a derogatory manner, and so today I want to flip the narrative on its head that casual gamers or just casual video games are less good. Of course, this narrative isn't as prevalent nowadays as it maybe was just a few years back, but a stigma isn't normally a temporary thing. Well, I mean, unless it's a mobile game, but no. In particular, I've chosen 3 games to focus on here today, all 3 being different genres that all fit into the casual market. Duh. If you somehow can't read still, or I just haven't put the games in the video title and you maybe can't recognise that they are in the thumbnail, the 3 games I'm going to talk about today are Superliminal, a puzzle game, Coffee Talk, a visual novel, and Stardew Valley, a simulation game. All 3 of these genres are typically go-tos for casual gamers. I think that's safe to say. Consider this a review video for all 3 of these games that's also kind of disguised as an essay video? I don't know, but either way, it'll probably go in my wildcards playlist. Maybe. Superliminal is a puzzle game developed and published by Pillow Castle Games in 2019, and right out of the gate, to say Superliminal is a trippy, often mind-boggling experience would be an understatement, to say the least. But I don't want to say the least, I want to say the most, which is why I'm about to go into excruciating detail about it. Well, maybe not excruciating detail, but nevertheless, first, some background. I first played Superliminal in early 2022, but before that, I had watched Markiplier's full playthrough of it back in 2020. But like with what I said about Little Nightmares back last year in my new Save File 5 video, the fact I had gone into the game with prior knowledge didn't make too much of a difference to me. Rather, just the fact that there had been a fair while between those two things did make a difference. In fact, upon playing for the first time, I didn't remember anything. Because of my goldfish memory, it was essentially a blind playthrough for me. Okay, well, not quite, but you get the idea. After having finished the game, I could safely say the game was one of my favourites in the puzzle genre, and maybe just one of the games I played that year. And I still think that's the case for both of those. But enough of my personal history for now. What is Superliminal exactly? Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a puzzle game, but one that prides itself on the illusion of perspective. What do I mean by this? See, Superliminal has you playing in the setting of dreams. Within the story, you're a test subject in the new dream therapy program thing that's supposed to help you relax and such, but things go awry when you're suddenly caught in a never-ending dream cycle that you're guided through by Dr. Glenn Pierce, the unofficial official main character of Superliminal, I guess. Premise aside, the dream setting alone typically allows for a more creative approach to gameplay, letting ideas just be without anchors to reality. Other games take advantage of this dream setting, such as Yume Nikki, the Clone series, and most iconically, Bigfoot's Big Game. That said, with Superliminal being a puzzle game as well, I think the dream setting is the best way to take advantage of such a genre, and Superliminal does that tenfold. I said that Superliminal is a puzzle game based on perspective, and that's because, well, yeah, I'm sure you've seen examples of this in action from the gameplay in the background, but admittedly, this is a bit of a hassle to explain. So allow me to read this excerpt from the game's Wikipedia page. The player can pick up a waist-high cube, which is then kept at its apparent current size from the player's perspective. The player can then look elsewhere around the room with the cube maintained at the same viewpoint, and drop that cube at a location at the furthest distance observed, where the cube will scale up or downwards in size based on the new perspective. So yeah, it sounds rather complex in theory, but I promise you when I say that it's actually a lot simpler in execution. To think, those two things are usually the other way around, but to be less eloquent with my wording for a second, this is also just, like, completely mind-blowing. It's enough to hurt your brain with how trippy a lot of it can get, but honestly, I I think that's great. That feeling of finally figuring out a puzzle after a long time is something I'm sure you're going to feel a lot throughout the game, especially with how clever it can get with its puzzles. This may seem like a cop-out, but Superliminal is generally one of those kinds of games where playing it for yourself is the best way to experience it, which I don't feel is something you hear a lot about this particular genre. That's more reserved for heavily story-driven games like anything Metal Gear related or Undertale. I've used this joke before. Oh, and just to slip this in here real quick, before we move on to the next game, Superliminal also just has genuinely really good writing. I don't know, dry wit humour always tends to get me.
Hello, name is my Pierce Dr. Glenn. To the Somnosculpt Welcome Experience, team of your care leader patient years 10 development. Conditions struggle you whatever with? Professional invention.
Talk about a game that just kind of came out of left field for me. Picture this, it's October 2022. You're pursuing the Xbox Game Pass for like the 174th time that month, and you come across a game that perhaps not many have paid attention to, and you encounter the other and or much bigger games on the service. You've got nothing else left to lose by simply giving it a go, mostly because Overwatch 1 shut down earlier that same month and you're still a little sorry about it. Alright, well that scenario is maybe a little too personal, but that's the exact scenario more or less that led me to play Coffee Talk for the first time. At a glance, Coffee Talk may not seem like your type of game, and you know what? That's fair enough, I can understand. With being a visual novel, a relatively niche genre compared to most, and one that also only appeals to a niche crowd, it isn't all guaranteed to strike your interest, and see, I was kind of the same. After all, seeing as visual novels are pretty much just books with maybe some interactive elements shoved in there, so it can still qualify as a game, and the fact my attention span is about as good as a fish's memory on a good day, I was, of course, a little unsure. However, the rare long-time viewers of this channel may remember I do actually have experience with visual novels in the past. Well, visual novel, singular, because it was only one, but what I'm trying to say is, going into Coffee Talk, my experience and just general knowledge I've picked up over the years how to be prepared for what Coffee Talk is. Now, we're 3 paragraphs into this part of the video, and I've come to the realization that this is going nowhere, and I feel like I've set some expectations I probably shouldn't have set. So to use it by way of segueing into talking about the game itself for what it just was, simply put, I love Coffee Talk so much. Developed by Toge Productions and published by Toge Productions and Chorus Worldwide, Coffee Talk puts you in control of this coffee shop barista whose job it is to serve coffee. Who would have thought? And listen to the problems of the customers who come to visit, with a setting taking place in this version of modern Seattle, which is inhabited by a number of fancy races and species like orcs, vampires, werewolves, and even mermaids. Specifically, the game takes place in the year 2020, just before the world shut down for like 2 years. Yeah, that whole thing. On my first playthrough back in October 2022, at first I didn't immediately click with the game. Honestly, however, there were things about it that even from first impressions vastly stood out to me as qualities of the game, such as the gorgeous pixel art style. I'm always a sucker for pixel art. That's very much inspired by 90s anime, which includes the likes of Cowboy Bebop and Sailor Moon, along with just an overall fantastic soundtrack. Oh, look at that, Lunar's about to praise the music in a video game. Who could have guessed? Well, yes. I'm just that unpredictable and original. Thank you for noticing. But anyway, as I was saying, the OST of Coffee Talk is nothing but pure bliss, to put it simply. It's very much inspired by the lo-fi chill hop genre of music, and as someone who is a lo-fi hip hop radio beats to relax and study to enjoy it, I might have a strong bias with the OST, but it's just perfect for the kind of game this is. Creating this super cozy, comfy atmosphere, the type that makes me want to actually find a coffee shop near me so I can spend the entire day writing or just relaxing or whatever. In case you're curious, my absolute favourite of the pieces in the game has to be Tenderhearted. This piece is just, it's so good. Tenderhearted, in my opinion, is the epitome of comfy vibes. Put you at ease and just let your mind drift away over a nice cup of coffee. Except I don't actually like coffee or tea for that matter, so I guess over a nice warm cup of hot chocolate. There are other great pieces too, such as One More Time, Cup of Sweetness and Hot and Cold, all having that great sense of comfort and chill to them, that bring home that comfy atmosphere that I love so much about the game. And you know, that cozy atmosphere I keep mentioning greatly works in favour of the premise because, as mentioned, the game has you listen to the problems of your customers, and to be upfront here, some of these problems do get a little heavy in the sense of them being real world issues as well. Now, that's not me saying these issues should be addressed at all in any medium, it's just that typically video games are usually an escapism from real life. However, if real world issues like the ones addressed in Coffee Talk are going to be talked about at all, I'd rather them be dealt with dignity and tact, which the game does just fine, let me make that clear. You can tell I'm dancing around having to bring them up here, but listen, I'm not the type of person to bring about the conversation about these particular subjects because I'm just a guy who likes talking about video games. That's not me saying people in the same boat don't have informative opinions to share, but I make memes on video game music, so I think I'm going to stick to my own lane here. Though again, I do admire how the game went about treating these issues, even if one or two of them didn't exactly get the amount of time they probably needed. So, to move on somewhat, the writing in this game is on point, making each character you meet feel genuinely unique, which is also helped by their very distinctive and memorable designs. If you were to ask me about my favourite character, I mean if you care anyway, that would have to be Freya, the otherwise main character of the game besides, well, yourself, and that's because I relate to her most. Not in every aspect, granted, but just generally. For a quick summary, Freya, who the Wikipedia describes as a fairy woman, which, side note, I don't actually know what that means, and Urban Dictionary wasn't any happy either, so I guess I'll just take that in a literal sense. But back to the point at hand. Freya is a journalist for a fictional newspaper known as the Even Whispers, and also happens to be an aspiring writer in her spare time, something she ends up following through on, writing a draft of her novel idea for a potential publisher by the end of the game's story. But, of course, such a task isn't exactly easy, with her having to balance her job around it, even pursuing it during her work hours, and I don't know, I just relate hard to that. The aspiring writer thing, I mean, not the you know what, never mind. Obviously, there are other characters you meet too, and again, they are all genuinely great ones, with me getting invested in their little stories, but yeah, as shows it may seem writers band together. Oh, and there's Aqua too, she's really cute. And to go back to when I said I didn't immediately click with the game, I eventually came around, and actually, my sudden love for the game became so great that I immediately wanted to play through it again just to experience these characters' stories and the comfy vibes of the game in general. There's also something really neat about the game that I want to acknowledge real quick. That's the fact that drinks you serve in the game exist in real life too, like the Masala Chai from India, Teh Tarik from Malaysia, and Shai Adani from Yemen. Apologies if I mispronounced any of those. Being the unconscious one I am, I didn't know a lot of these existed, so extra kudos to Coffee Talk on teaching me something new. At the time of this video, I played through the game about 3 times, with a 4th playthrough going on my Twitch that, I'll get back to eventually, I hope. And for something like that to happen, where I just want to play through a game again right after beating it, that's honestly a rare occurrence for me. From the last time I remember that happening being with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and woof, jeez, Coffee Talk and XE2 in the same sentence, who would have thought? Coffee Talk is a cozy, wholesome, thought-provoking, and genuinely feel-good game that I'm glad I gave a shot, and I think you should too. And you can most certainly bet that I am excited for Coffee Talk Episode 2, Hibicus and Butterfly releasing this year. With my need for wanting more good stuff immediately afterwards, it's safe to say I fell in love with Coffee Talk at the right time. Oh boy, this is the one. In truth, I have talked about this game before back in my new Save File 6 video in May of 2022. Wow, it's been that long, huh? Time is unforgiving. God damn, the existential crisis keeps creeping on for me. But anyway, in that video, as the series was meant for, I gave my first impressions on Stardew Valley, and I was super positive about it, even going on about how I wanted to do a full review of the game in time, mostly because of all the remaining gameplay footage left over that I didn't want to go to waste, but nevertheless, that leads us to today. For a brief summary, Stardew Valley was developed and published by Concerned Ape in 2016. It's a simulation role-playing game that has you take over a rather sorry farm that you inherited from your late grandfather, and use it as a reason to escape the monotony of your current life, working 9 to 5 in some office cubicle. In other words, the typical millennial experience. While I've been breaking my kind of, sort of, but not really promise of making a full-length review, I've since made the decision to reserve the review format for long-form games, if that makes any sense. And anyway, I still haven't actually finished Stardew Valley. Now, okay, with Stardew Valley being a life simulation game akin to Animal Crossing, or more appropriately, Harvest Moon, it's hard to actually, well, finish these types of games. Rather, you get to a point of satisfaction where you can say, okay, I'm done here. There's no hard end to these types of games, and you know what? That's amazing. So far, I've honestly had a great time with Stardew. There's just something about going about your day, doing your little chores, and slowly seeing progression happen around you. The exact reason why people love the previously mentioned Animal Crossing and Harvest Moon so much. The game moves at your speed. Well, kind of. I say that because, unlike AC or HM, Stardew doesn't run on an external clock. Instead, an in-game hour is about, say, 43 seconds. Yeah, I don't know why an hour isn't just a minute, but this has both an upside and downside to it. Basically, while progression is happening a lot faster than something like AC, which runs off an external clock, it can sometimes feel like you don't have enough time in a day. But to be honest, this isn't that big of a problem, because although there are some limited time in-game events, you have plenty of time to prepare for these. So really, the lack of time shouldn't be a major issue. Unless you're exploring caves where it feels like you're also constantly fighting the clock, but nonetheless. But if I had to summarize what it's like to play Stardew Valley in one word, I would say relaxing. And as for how much of an easy thing that is to say about this type of game, I really do mean that. Besides the slow but satisfying gameplay loop of watching your little farm grow day by day, the presentation of Stardew Valley shines phenomenally. It has this just absolutely gorgeous Pixar art style, and this may just be me, but I think that games like this, you know, the comfort game type, the one where you can just relax while playing, work perfectly with this type of style. Maybe it's the nostalgia of retro gaming that comes with feeling at ease. Personally, I can't relate to the whole nostalgia thing. I'm more nostalgic for the pixel aliasing of the DS and janky modeling of the Wii, but yeah, I still get it, you know? There's also the master of the soundtrack, which I feel has been scientifically manufactured to be the epitome of comfort and good vibes. Okay. That first part sounds like I'm being negative, but absolutely not. I love this soundtrack so much. It's wonderful. Give it a listen as soon as you can, because I think you're deserving of some good vibes. To talk about the game more, or rather my experience with it, maybe you've seen it in the background gameplay, but my farm is by no means an artistic example of a well-managed farm. But this kind of thing usually takes me a while to grasp, or rather, understand what I want exactly. But that's not to say I'm not proud of what I have going now, because I love my little farm. Sure, it's not grand and may seem a little messy, but it's my farm, and that's all that matters. I've even got some chickens now. Bet you can't guess my inspiration behind naming them. I guess for some closure, I mentioned in my new Save File 6 video that I was thinking about furthering my relationship with Abigail, though I wasn't 100% sure at the time. But I can tell you now, I went on to marry Abigail. I guess I have a thing for girls with purple hair or something, I don't know. However, I did explore my options a little before committing, which sounds horrible, I know, but bear with me. In wanting to see who else I could further a relationship with, I immediately gravitated towards Caroline because I just liked her design. That was until I realised she wasn't a romanceable option, being already married and all, and also being Abigail's mother. Yeah, only I could do such a thing as pursuing the mother of the girl I eventually end up marrying. I still have a long way to go with Stardew. I mean, hey, I have yet to repair this bridge over here that apparently leads somewhere else with even more characters to meet. I need to fill out various collection pages, like the cooking one, which I really want to make an effort on soon. I still need to find a use for the skeleton key that I found at the bottom of the mines. Speaking of that, real quick, spoilers, I guess, but I got a major kick out of the Xenobane reference after consuming a star drop. I loved that so much, but who could have predicted that? Not like it's my favourite series or anything. And even then, there's still so much I have yet to discover, and that's just great. Any game that can continue to offer so much even after a long time of playing is one meant for longevity. Furthermore, with me being on PC now, I can delve into the modern community to get even more out of Stardew Valley, should I feel like the base game is not enough, which, long shot there, but nevertheless. Stardew Valley is wonderful, and with the game having sold 20 million copies as of 2022, and is generally regarded as one of the greatest games of all time, I think a lot of other people share that opinion, and rightfully so. With however long this video has turned out to be, I hope I've convinced you that casual video games have their qualities too. Life's not always about going 100 miles per hour, sometimes it's about slowing down so you can enjoy it, and I think casual video games are just perfect for that. Whether it be solving a few puzzles, reading a good book, or living out your dream life. There's something for everyone, but I suppose the same can be said about video games as a whole.